In progress.
Thank you. We begin the Wednesday, December 1st, 2021 meeting of Narberth Borough Council. It is 7:34 p.m. Ms. Bryant, could you call the roll, please?
Absolutely. Council President Aaron Mudrick.
Present.
Council Vice President Bob Weisford. Papa was on
Via Zoom, perhaps?
yeah, he's on Zoom, but looks his audio isn't on yet. Councilmember Fred Bush.
Here.
Councilmember Barbara Fortner.
Here.
Councilmember Rob Grady.
Here.
Councilmember Michelle Panopoulos.
Here.
Councilmember Cindy Rickards.
Here.
Mayor Andrea Deutsch.
Here.
All right. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda this evening? Ms. Bryant.
Thank you, Council President. I would like to ask, based upon information received yesterday from the Borough Solicitor, that item 9A be removed from the agenda. We need to make some further updates to that ordinance before Council can advertise it.
Can I get a motion to remove 9A?
I moved.
Moved, seconded by Councilor Panopoulos. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion is removed. Is that all? All right, I have no comments. Ms. Mayor?
Yeah, there's been a lot of chatter recently on social media regarding some dog rules, and I just wanted to remind folks of some of the rules when owning a dog in the borough. Please make sure to pick up after your animals when you walk them. Please don't throw the waste in private containers unless you have the express permission of the owner of those containers to throw them out in those containers. But let's keep our borough neat and tidy and clean for all its residents and visitors. It's very helpful. There is also a leash law, so you're supposed to have your animal under control at all times, and that generally means having a leash on it. So let's not have animals running loose, and keep all our dogs and kids and people safe. So I'd also, on a fun note, like to remind everybody that we have the Dickens Fest this Sunday from 12 to 4. Streets in the downtown will be closed off, so keep that in mind. But please come down and enjoy all the festivities in our downtown. And that's it.
All right, thank you. We'll move to public comment. First, we'll start in the room. Is there any public comment? Ms. Scanlon.
Good evening, Carol Marie Scanlon on Sabine Avenue. A couple comments. First of all, with the presentation that's going to be going on today with the 201 property, I really would like to encourage this council that the residents of Narberth have spoken, and we really want open space. We do not want the property developed. We don't want apartments there. We don't want shopping centers there. We don't want businesses there. And also, sorry, I'm out of breath, I just ran up here. The borough, this property, the park side of the property was given to the borough for the children of Narberth, donated as playing fields. And as has been noted to this council, as well as by our attorney, that any sale or development of this property will need to go before Orphans Court to say why a donated property to a borough, to a municipality, is no longer needed as a park. So that's something to be noted, because we do not want that property developed. Also, encourage the community, listen to what the community has to say. Ask, I think you're doing this backwards. You're saying this is what y'all want to do. Instead of saying to the community, hey community, what do you want? And solicit ideas from the community. You may be surprised that there are some very interesting and creative options for this property from the community. I also want to comment about the bike lane. This bike lane, I think, is very, very dangerous. It's not well marked. It's very confusing. I drove past it on the weekend, and I couldn't tell who was coming or going. There was 2 bikes on there. They couldn't tell what was going. The markings aren't clear. The lighting is not good. And with all the construction that's going on in this town, really not a good time to be throwing a bike lane in. If there was a calm in the town, if there was no construction vehicles, that would be a time. And also springtime, summertime. Wintertime's not really the time to be doing something like this with it getting dark early and with it being all confusing. And then as far as we talk about the bridge art, last meeting y'all were talking about the bridge art. We really just need a bridge, and spending $100,000 on bridge art really does not seem to be a good use of taxpayer dollars. I've mentioned multiple times, if you want to have some kind of art on the bridge, put the borough seal on it. We're very proud of our borough. Put the borough seal. We don't need some fancy art on our half-square mile borough's property. I think if you ask borough residents, I think they'd say they'd really rather have a bridge than be sitting here and putzing around trying to figure out very expensive artwork. That's my comment tonight.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members present who would like to make public comment? Sir.
Yep, John Constantine, 400 North Narberth.
Thank you.
I would agree with Ms. Scanlon about the open space and the need to preserve it. Secondly, the current playground, the main one here in Narberth, is in no better shape than it was 40 years ago when I played it. It's a mud ball. My kids are now playing soccer and stuff, and they were there a couple weeks ago, and it's in despicable condition. I mean, if you're going to be spending $100,000 for artwork, I think you should repair the field.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I apologize for coming in late. Is there going to be a comment section after the presentation on 201 Sabine?
No. This is the section for public comment, and if you had comments following the presentation, there would be public comment at the next meeting on December 15th.
Okay, so just by way of general comments then,
Can I get your name and address?
yeah, Lawrence Goldberg and Serena Chen, 200 Sabine Avenue.
Yes.
So yeah, we're directly across the street from the property, and I just want to point out that it really is not conducive to what it's doing now. We've had so many problems since we last looked at this issue a year ago. We've had so many problems with people blocking driveways, people coming the wrong way on the one-way street, loud music, disrespectful tenants from the building, and it was never set up. It was set up to be a school, a neighborhood school. It was never set up to be a commercial building. So I just wanted to point that out, that the current situation is really not tenable.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else who would like to make public comment? All right, I'll close the public comment in the room, and I will move to the Zoomery.
So,
Yes, hello, if I...
actually, sorry, hold on 1 second. Just so we have an organized process here, because we do have a lot of people, a lot more people than usual on Zoom here tonight. So if you'd like to make a comment, feel free to use the raise hand function on Zoom, or just literally raise your hand, and then I will call on people, and we'll go from there. So we will start with Mr. Stephen Menard.
Thank you, I appreciate your time. My name is Stephen Menard. I live at 216 Sabine, directly across from the 201 property that's being discussed this evening. I just wanted to echo Carol Marie's comments and say that I think we're pretty unified here in this neighborhood, or this part of Narberth, that open space and green space is of primary importance, and we are extremely resistant, and in fact dead set against any expansion of commercial or industrial use or anything of that nature, even multiple housing units. If anything, retain the building or revamp a building or even a new building for the childcare and some of the local people who are there already, that would be great. But the existing green space should either be preserved as is or, even better, expanded. That's my view. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, on Zoom, I don't see anyone else's with the digital hand raise or a literal hand raise. So I guess I'll do a final call here to make sure if there's anyone else on Zoom who'd like to make public comment.
All right, hearing none, I will close public comment, and we will move to presentation item 7A, Dr. Mumin, welcome, and thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here this evening, President. I am Khalid Mumin, the Superintendent of the Lower Marian School District. I am currently in the throes of a 100-day plan where I'm getting out to meet many of the stakeholders in the community, of course, meeting all the children, business partners, legislators, educators, just to reiterate that we're on the same accord in regards to taking care of and grooming and motivating our most precious asset in Lower Marian Township, which are our children. So I'm extremely excited to do this work. I have a great team, have to say that publicly. I have a great team around me, and it's been fast and furious the past 5 weeks. And I'll tell you, to give you some, I heard a statement or a comment earlier about how the sausage is made. When you have all 10 fingers or have your fingers and your toes in the mix and you're working it out, I can tell you and rest assured that our children are being educated to extremely high standards. And I really love the mindset around the district in regards to our educators and motivating our children. It's not for them to just be active participants in our democracy, per se. The expectation is for them to become leaders in that space, or in this space, meaning our democracy. So I am extremely excited to stand in front of, sometimes stand on the side, and sometimes I'm in the back while we move our kids to infinite possibilities of success. So thank you so much for having me here this evening, and I'm available for any questions that anyone may have.
I'd just like to extend our welcome to you, and also just recognize that there are at least 2 of us on council that are Lower Marian High School graduates that have moved back and joined the council. So I think that speaks to exactly the mission you've outlined.
Thank you. Leadership in this ever-changing democracy.
I just want to say welcome, and we're very excited to have you in the borough and leaving our school district, and we wish you all the success in the world, because your success is our success.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
So I didn't graduate from Lower Marian High School, but one of the reasons we moved out here was the excellence of the school district. So I really look forward to your leadership in expanding and developing the great school district that we have.
Thank you. Thank you. And just from my vantage point, I've been saying words like we're future forward, future focused. And as we know, especially in our daily living, the future is changing right before our eyes. And it is a challenge to continually present options and access for our children to be able to engage in those spaces. So I thank you for your comments. We're moving.
Dr. Mumin, I graduated from Radnor High School. So I'm afraid, but I live here now, and I have 3 children in the Lower Marian School District, and it's been a wonderful experience. My oldest is graduating this year, and I want to welcome you and thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you so much. I've been here for 5 weeks, so I believe that I am qualified to say this. Yeah, welcome back from the dark side. So we love that. We love that you're here and you have 3 children coming up in the school district.
Well, now I feel compelled to say something because I graduated from Hilliard High School in Ohio, so I did not go to school here. But and I've not had children in the school district, but I have been really pleased to be paying taxes in the school district because I see the children of my neighbors, and I see how they're nurtured by their schools, and it feels the same as how I was nurtured by mine. So I'm happy to be paying my taxes.
Oh, thank you so much, and you hone in on a very interesting and unique component of how students are educated in the Lower Marian School District. It's about the individual student, and I can tell you with now my 26th year in education, this is my 11th as a superintendent, I have not seen anything like this, whereas I walk into a 2nd grade classroom and the children are working on mindfulness, And the classroom in second grade is looking like a giant Socratic seminar. This is second grade. This is second grade. That is really a huge motivating factor to really get the best out of our children and individualize their experiences. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to watch. Beautiful to be a part of.
Dr. Mubin, I also have two children in the school district, both in high school, one graduating this year, and I think it is a fantastic school district, and it was a great place for my children to receive their education. On a personal note, very meaningful to me that the school spent so much time developing the emotional intelligence of children and the importance of community and leadership, and I look forward to you continuing to nurture that and bring it forward. I'll also take the opportunity, because it's very unlikely that you'll be at one of our meetings again, to mention three issues which I'm coming to the conclusion of 12 years of service on council, so I've seen things come and go. Three areas of specific concern to the Narberth community. You're going to reach for your notepad there. One of them is currently the status quo, and that is high school choice. Which I think has been tremendously helpful to Narberth children who, for whatever reason, might decide not to travel with their cohort when they leave middle school and go into high school. And I think it's very valued in this community, and hopefully something that we can continue. One that is not currently, one that is available to some of the Narberth community is a walkable elementary school. And for the students on the south side who are districted to Marian Elementary, that walkable lifestyle in a town that it really is completely focused around its walkability, in a borough focused on walkability, is a reality. But on the north side, the children go to Belmont Hills Elementary. And Mr. Spear, who is sitting directly to your left, regularly organizes a Belmont Hills Elementary School walk, where the children will walk how many miles is it, Jim?
It's 2.5 miles. I no longer have kids at Belmont Hill, so it's on to other people are doing it now.
You did this walk for many, many years. Yes. Okay, and I think just to show the commitment, I think, of a lot of Narberth kids, you would get a large gaggle of them walking that 2.5 miles in the cold to walk to elementary school. If the opportunity presented itself at some future date, I think Narberth would really jump at the chance to have their students all be able to walk to elementary. And then the last piece is Narberth going to elementary school together. That is, we have a town that is cut in half by railroad tracks, and children on one side go to one school and children on the other side go to another school, while at the same time they all have a Narberth identity and they're focused around our downtown and local athletics, and bringing those Narberth children together, if at some point that becomes possible, would really be valued by this community.
Thank you.
I hope you type fast.
I was working on demographically.
And if you'd like to follow up, obviously offline, we're always happy to do that. But I think I can speak on behalf of the entire council and the town of Narberth that we are very pleased and excited to have you in the role as superintendent, and look forward to you having great success.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, and it's a pleasure for me to lead, especially to say this in a great authenticity, to lead your children.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We will go to 7B, the next item in the meeting. Dr. Mubin and Ms. Buckman, if you don't care to stay for the whole meeting, we completely understand.
We've stayed in many meetings. This is so liberating to be able to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a lovely rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
7B, Sabine Avenue Vision, 201 Sabine. Would that go to you, Michelle? Or?
Sure, yeah,
Okay.
I can sort of talk us to the beginning of this, and then hopefully we have some nice discussion. Is there any, can we have the slides
Yeah,
up?
absolutely.
Can folks on Zoom see them, or just us? I don't remember how this works.
If I share my screen, then everyone will be able
Okay,
to,
well, whatever works best for you.
to see it.
I'm just going to give this a little tilt so that some of our audience members can see better as well. I know council members had the opportunity to preview these slides, so.
Well, it was in the meeting packet, so everyone.
Hi, can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Can you see us?
I can see Samantha.
Yeah, but I mean, the room is live. Okay, that's great. Sorry for the technical problems. Our manager's laptop seems to be non-functional. Good thing we have a backup, which we will use. Councilor Rickards, are you sharing your screen with the presentation?
It's Michelle, and just to report, we have the whole hour, so we can see the entire room, we can hear you, and we can see Michelle Carroll's slides, so we are ready to go.
Okay, so it doesn't look like we have the ability now to present the slides to the room. Nope.
Actually, maybe. Let's see here.
Gonna see if we can make that work. And then we will get back to business. I don't think this laptop is connected to the
Wi-Fi here.
So you'll have to do that.
Okay.
Fortunately, Dr. Levine was there.
But I'm going to continue. I'm actually going to move forward with some other agenda items while we try to get these slides up, because I think we can do that without the slide piece. We can get the meeting moving. So 9B, can I get a motion to confirm to put 9B on the table?
I move to put 9B in. I move to confirm the hiring of Meg Wozniak as public works director.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded, Councilor Fortner. I don't think there's any discussion. All in favor? Aye. From our Zoom council members, is there assent?
Aye.
Okay. All right, 9C, consideration of the revised COVID policy.
I move that we revise the COVID-19 vaccination policy.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, can someone other than Samantha give me information about what the revision is?
Yeah, so this is a revision to handle a specific scenario with the police department when they're on duty, but there is no access to the testing facilities. It's
Okay.
to allow them to take an at-home test, which is otherwise prohibited under our policy when
Okay.
they're working nights.
Okay. Is there any other discussion or questions from council?
Recording in progress.
Any other questions or discussions from council? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The revision is adopted.
If I can have this on the same network as the TV, I should have to get
Okay.
AirPlay on.
Let's go to committee reports. Infrastructure.
Sure. So we met last week. We talked about some updates to the use and occupancy ordinance that would formalize our current practice of inspecting sidewalks when there's a change in ownership of a building. And we talked about updated sidewalk maintenance regulations. These are both to go with the enhanced inspections, the sidewalk inspections that we'll be doing next year. The sidewalk maintenance regulations are drawn, I think, primarily from Lower Marian's standards, and they would make it possible for public works staff to go and look at sidewalks, and they'd have some straightforward standards that they could apply with a ruler to determine if the sidewalks are safe or not. So those are going to be coming before council soon. I think we recommended to proceed with those. We had a discussion about a purchase of new office wiring and Ethernet ports for this building. These are some changes that were recommended by KCBA and Samantha. Well, she's busy. As you can see, we've got a tangle of wires in here, and the office downstairs also doesn't have convenient ports in a lot of places. So this is another sort of purchase to make things flow more smoothly in our new Zoom environment. We also recommended moving forward with those.
How do I get AirPlay?
We had a proposal for a new VoIP phone system. So there was some dissatisfaction with the current level of customer support and the current price for the phone system. And Michelle Carroll did some research and found a cheaper provider that also would allow some expanded capabilities for the borough, would allow an easier transfer between landlines and cell phones. So it seems like a great option. because it will save the borough money and expand capacity. We talked about the Hanson Court streetlight pillars. So these were a request from residents of Hanson Court last year to let the borough take over their some of the street lights that they have, and borough agreed to do that. So we're still sorting out the details of how that's going to work legally. We need to take possession of the street lights, and we need to then probably take them down and put up standard street lights because they're in poor condition. And we talked about the Haverford Avenue bike pilot, which is coming up. It's mostly in place now. We're going to have the official grand opening on Saturday at 9 a.m., Wheels on Haverford. But right now you can take a look at it. This is a proposal that's been developed for a while with the help of the cycling club. And it's a trial, so we're going to look and see how it performs. We have some data on how the road's been used by the DVRPC. They were grateful to them for providing some traffic counter technology that lets us look at what was going on before we put it in, and then we're going to look at who's actually using it once it's in, and we'll be using that to determine whether this should be a permanent part of the borough or not. I'm just going to check. I believe we had a brief discussion about the intersection under the bridge and the lengthy traffic delays that are coming in from there. This is an emergent discussion, and we're going to look at the light timing and see if there's anything we can do about expanding the light timing to let Narberth traffic flow better, particularly during rush hour. And we have one other issue that was new. So due to a miscommunication with the Civic Association, they were not able to record the meeting. Afterwards, there was a discussion whether it might be time for the Civic Association to allow Zoom to record the meeting and to not be present, well, not to be recording every single meeting, whether the Zoom technology that we have along with the OWL is sufficient to handle that. So I think that's an open question for council at this point.
Okay. Any questions for infrastructure? Okay.
Fred, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
2 questions. The first is, have we made any headway on outdoor dining? We had discussed, I know, of course, we voted on kind of the regulations and that, but we had initially discussed it, kind of switching out some of those less aesthetically appealing water barriers into something more attractive that could potentially be cost shared between the NBA and the businesses. And then the part 2 to that is we had also discussed that really some sort of raised pedestrian crosswalk, particularly at the intersections of North Narberth and Haverford, potentially again at Forest and Haverford, to slow down that traffic. Given the Alfresco Dining. Have either of those 2 been discussed?
They were not discussed this month. They're good topics for the future, but they haven't been discussed. They were not discussed at the last meeting.
Can I request that we put that on the council agenda, given that hopefully holiday traffic will be picking up, we'll have more people eating outside. We want to encourage people, particularly with this new variant, that feel comfortable eating outside.
But we can put it on the agenda for the 15th.
Okay.
But,
thank you.
We can't change the agenda at this point. Okay. Let's go through the committee reports and then we'll circle back to 9A. Finance and Administration?
Sure. Michelle, if I can ask you to make me co-host, I can share my screen and put up our comprehensive plan review by pinning it, and then I'm going to ask Fred to walk us through that, just given...
I'm sorry. Hold on just one moment, please.
Sure.
It's already on the agenda following the 201 Sabine.
So let's hold off on that.
Oh, it is. Okay, so why don't we hold off the FNA report, given that I updated folks at our last meeting?
We're a little bit out of order.
We'll be back to the comprehensive plan.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else for Finance and Administration?
No, we've reviewed everything last meeting,
All right.
nothing since that time.
Public health and safety?
Okay, we met just before this meeting, and we have been working on a inspection program, and our understanding is the solicitor is working on a resolution for fire inspection and an ordinance for rental inspection. And that would come, I believe, to our committee in January, and then we would go from there. You know, I think it would come to the council shortly after.
Okay.
We have a number of traffic concerns that have come to the committee, and the trouble is our speed counter is malfunctioned, and we've had trouble getting it, you know, with supply chain problems. We haven't been able to get it fixed. So the committee has recommended that we activate the data subscription on the second speed traffic unit that we have, because we have 2 of those units. So the committee recommends spending that extra money to do that, because we have actually quite a significant need, and we think we could actually use both of the counters going forward.
Okay.
From the EAC, we're looking at a green building code, which would be more stringent than the universal construction code. So it's just something that we're exploring. And we're going to be happy to circulate that code for the council to look at. But we plan to discuss it in January in our committee. And next year, we're also looking at possibly applying for Soul Smart designation, which is likely we already qualify for. So it's just kind of a bronze, silver, gold rating. And it brings attention to the possibility of solar energy among residents. We're also looking to partner with the council on the updated stormwater ordinance next year and make sure that it's in line with the climate action plan. There are several updates in the meeting packet for public health and safety with regard to traffic concerns, LED streetlights, trash. So I encourage people to look at the packet or email me with questions.
Okay. Thank you. Parking ad hoc.
Okay.
Council Fortner.
Sure. So we met on 23rd, I think it was. Yes. And as we start working through all of the moving parts in some ways of this, we're finding things that need to be fine-tuned before we can even implement anything new. And that's actually, you know, one of the item that got removed from the agenda tonight is something that came through this committee, unearthed through work that Samantha and Michelle and the solicitor had been doing, and said, hey, we need to make some changes. So as we're doing this, we're coming about this and saying, well, this is going to be work that gets done in a step-by-step fashion, not a boom, here's a completed everything, make a decision. So what that means is that you're going to just be getting stuff from us almost every meeting of something that needs to be considered or decided. And so because we're aware of, you know, how that is going to come out in these pieces, we are still meeting twice a month so that we can keep this moving at a quick pace. So you should expect you're going to see something from us the next couple months, probably at every meeting. There's going to be something parking related that needs attention by council.
So when is the next meeting?
Thank you. I was going to say that and I forgot.
Yeah.
It's the 14th of December at 8 a.m. The second meeting in December is on the 21st at 8 a.m.
And members of the public are welcome to.
Oh, of course. Okay. Of course. Yeah. And the agenda's posted, and so, yeah.
It is a public meeting.
Yeah, it's a public meeting.
Of course, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just, I wanted to remind folks.
Okay. Yeah, it's just it's another committee. We just don't exist forever. We're going to finish and not need any more.
So you're saying now?
Oh, we're going to finish.
Okay, thank you. All right, that concludes committee reports. Let's go back to 7B, 201 Sabine Division. Councilor Pananopoulos.
Sorry, Michelle Carroll, could you please share your screen because I don't want to risk That was working, and I don't want to risk repeating what we just went through.
There we go.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Smith. Thank you, Aaron. Well, I'm excited that we're getting a chance to talk about this again after a long pause. I should probably just disclaimer, vision is kind of an inaccurate description. I don't have a vision to share with anybody tonight, so don't expect that. You'll be disappointed. But I think we want to talk about a number of issues. But I put the bird's eye view of Sabine Avenue I wanted us to sort of take a look at it together before we get started, because sometimes we just sort of forget. And if you look at what is on this approximately 3.5 to 4 acre property, depending on what line you measure to, there's very little open space there right now. I mean, it's very, very limited. And given that we know that the public is very interested in increasing open space, protecting open space, I think that it's just really worth our time to look at this and see how little open space we have there right now, so we can look forward to improving the situation. So I put a little timeline on the second slide just to get everybody, and just to remind everybody where we are in terms of the process. This is probably mainly for members of the public. I think everyone in council probably has this fresh in their minds, but this is kind of like the modern history of the property from 2017. There's decades of history before this that we're not going to delve into, but the bottom line is that for many, many, many years after the school was decommissioned, the elementary school that was housed in that building, the borough owned the property and had possession of the property, but Lower Marian School District had a right of recapture. And so the borough never really felt solid in being able to make plans or being able to figure out what to do with the property. So, over the years and the generations before us, I think they were kind of dealt a bad hand and did the best they could. They said, well, what we can do is at least try to get some revenue. So let's see if we can sort of rent this for commercial uses and generate some revenue while we sort of wait out this process of the school district having this right of recapture. I think another sort of logical thing that happened was that the borough didn't want to put a lot of taxpayer money into this building, not knowing what its future ownership would ultimately be. And as a consequence, when we get to 2017, where the school board released the district's take-back right, the building by now has had decades of decay. So then you see the next thing on the timeline is the KCBA facility evaluation. That was a comprehensive borough-wide facilities and grounds assessment. When they looked at the Sabine Avenue building complex, they saw about $3.8 million in deferred maintenance. We had some public discussions unofficially at meetings and committees about whether or not we were prepared to do that. I think these discussions prompted some concern that council was planning to sell the property or something, or put condos all over it. So we passed a resolution in mid-April, which binds this borough to preserve or increase the amount of open space on the property. So then in 2020, we did the first repair that was on the KCBA facility list. It was just a little over $600,000 to replace the roof and remove the soffits and turn them into a simple gutter system. I will say the project was more expensive than the bid. It was over budget. It took a long time. It was difficult to do. It's difficult to do repairs in an occupied daycare where there's an occupied daycare facility. It was not easy. I think we continue to have some more discussions about whether or not this was a rational course of action to pursue to do these repairs. Then we hired RES, you recall, as a consultancy to help us engage in a process of community engagement and outreach, to conduct meetings with stakeholders and community groups to get a sense of what the community wants, so we could sort of inform ourselves in making these decisions. So there was a tenants meeting September last year, and then there was a near neighbors meeting. RES oversaw a mail-in comments period. We have about 43 or so letters from Narberth residents, letters and emails as part of that process. Then there was a president's forum late October that Aaron conducted with RES present as well. We had breakout groups and small discussions. We had sort of brainstorming. There was a survey that was available. The comment section on Zoom was open. Aaron gave a really informative and great presentation, and there was quite a bit of discussion. And then in the wake of that, we opened the survey was open to the entire community for about, I don't know, a little short of a month. It was an online survey. We got about 360 responses from Narberth residents. I have found all of that input that we've gotten at the meetings, through the survey, the many letters that I've received and emails that we've received, which I've read over and over again. I found that all very, very helpful and informative. One of the comments that we've received and we heard loud and clear was that, look, you're getting ahead of yourselves. You haven't persuaded us as a community yet that you can't do that the best course of action isn't to just do these repairs and keep the building and keep renting it as a commercial property. It had seemed, I think, that we got a little ahead of ourselves. It seemed clear from sort of back of the envelope calculations. This was probably not going to be a financially wise decision. But, sort of out of respect for those requests, we hired a consultant, eConsult, that sort of specializes in real estate analysis and financial analysis. They took a look at the KCBA report. They sort of ran the numbers. And what they calculated was that, given the time that's passed, factoring in for contingencies and the cost of inflation, they put the number to do the repairs on the building at $4.7 million. So that is where we are. That was in October. So we really haven't talked about this much since last December. I think that was because we had a pandemic going on. It's because we've had a lot of change in our administration and leadership. We wanted to give Manager Brian an opportunity to get her feet on the ground. But I think it's time to sort of take up these discussions again and see what we should do. So the next slide is where we are now. So where we are now, and I put pictures of the building on it again because I just want to draw.
Sorry, hold on, can you just hold up for 1 second?
No problem. I broke the meeting with this. So anyway, I completely broke it. Well, never mind the slides. I mean, it's not that, we'll see if we get them up, we get them up. I don't want to make everybody wait forever. All right, we're fine. So where we are now is we are currently a commercial landlord. It's highly unusual for a municipality to engage in the business of being a commercial landlord or to put any portion of its operating revenues as being dependent on sort of an inherently volatile income source. It takes time away from our administration. It's a tricky thing to do. We have a property manager who manages the property. But it's an unusual situation to be in. It's not one that the borough chose because it seemed like the best idea. It was the best idea of all. It was the best idea given the bad hand that the borough had been dealt. It was the best thing that we could think of to do with the property. But we're still in that situation 4 years after, the property became ours free and clear. And I think if you look with an unbiased eye at what experience that building in that location creates for the neighbors who live next to it, behind it, across the street, you see an awful lot of concrete and brick, monolithic, relatively empty walls. A strange situation where it borders Elm Terrace and the neighbors sort of have this just sort of awkward view of the top of the building and the sort of decrepit roof. It's not a beautiful feature in the neighborhood. And I think we don't have at present a plan for conducting these repairs. Not only we don't have a budget for it, but we don't have a plan for how we would do those repairs. Things as extensive as all the electrical, the mechanical systems. While we have a bunch of children in a preschool there. I mean, these are things that we need to think about. This is our present situation. If we were to stay the course, the next slide shows the numbers that eConsult came up with when they ran the analysis, which, shows pretty clearly that, and this is kind of a best case scenario in some ways because this assumes that the building remains occupied and rented. This assumes that KCBA's numbers aren't dramatically understating the costs or the extent of the repairs.
I'm sorry,
This is
just real
serious.
quick. Michelle Carroll, can you please zoom in a little bit so everyone can see that document?
And I don't remember what assumption they made for our borrowing rate, but I think it was, it was relatively optimistic. So this is, I mean, in the best case scenario, we're in the red shortly, and for, 20, 25. We asked them to project this out 25 years to see if that was like a loan that was that long. And so our present course leads us to saddle future generations with debt. And if we're going to do that, I think we better feel confident that we have a good reason for it. We have a good strategic reason that we're serving important community needs, that we're doing this rationally. The next slide just says, where do we go from here? And at this point, I really would like to have some discussion, some open discussion, I think, about if council's willing, about regardless of what ultimately happens with the property. And, as we progress through, there's some scenarios that we can talk about that are specific. Whether any of those get chosen and done, or whatever it is that we do, can we at this point commit ourselves to say, this situation, committing to spend maybe almost $5 million of taxpayer money in order to keep a failing building alive so we can extract a small amount of commercial rent that doesn't pay for the repairs. Continuing in the course of being a commercial landlord, can we agree that that is not a tenable course of action? That is a course of action that we will not pursue. I think I'd like to know if we can discuss that and have consensus on it, basically, because without that,
And so
We can't
maybe
move forward.
the best maybe way to handle that within the framework of this meeting is to sort of ask the question, is there a council member who feels like we should continue to invest repairs in this building, given the financials that we've seen, and maintain its status quo in its current envelope, et cetera. So now would be the time to speak up if you feel strongly in opposition to sort of change. Hearing none.
yeah, or if there are reasons for change that I haven't articulated, do you think it's important to put on the table for members of the public? Because I can't speak for everyone. I mean, I may have failed to appreciate some of the reasons, but yeah, I mean, so I think if we are not going to stay the course, we're not going to maintain the status quo, we need to then figure out where we're going to go from here. And so the next slide is what our community has told us, what they've said. And, our community has told us a lot of things. As I said, with many, many different letters. In that survey, there were open-ended response fields that everyone, if they didn't feel like any of the options that were presented represented what they wanted, they were free to add another first choice, and then there was another open-ended field, like, tell us if there's something else that you have a vision about. So it was a really open-ended survey. We can't all read those results here tonight at the meeting, but they're up on the borough's website. If anybody wants to look at the raw data, you can look. We took the names off of the survey results because it's not like a letter that somebody sends in. But you can look and sort of see what the input is. These are the survey choices that people chose. Right? So we can count how many people chose any one of these, how many Narberth residents chose any one of these as their top three. And I think,
Michelle, would you mind if I sort of summarize, or if you'd like to summarize? I know you don't want to read them all through.
no, I'm not going to read them
But
all.
there does seem to be an overwhelming choices in these numbers. They're not close, they're not right next to each other.
Not at all. Not at all. I think that you see very clearly that the dominant choice of, in the top three was to use the property for outdoor public space, for community gathering and recreations, like parks, playing fields, that sort of thing. Some of the other responses that had a lot of strong support in using the property for indoor public space, right, for community gathering, like a community building. There was also very strong support to preserve the existing daycare use and community nonprofit uses, regardless of whether it's in that building or whether there's a reconfiguration to accommodate them. And then a very strong preference of our community is that regardless of what we do, we advance our environmental goals, such as carbon neutrality and stormwater management, and that we preserve the landscaping to the extent possible. I mean, there were people that chose other options. There were people that wrote in very strongly saying, we want you to sell this thing and make as much money as you can. I mean, people have a lot of different opinions, right? And some people would like to see us, use this property to lower their taxes. But that was not a strong choice among the respondents. So given that, what we have to look at next are 5 ideas. You could call them, I wouldn't call them, go so far as to call them visions. They're 5 ideas, plans that take those priorities and preferences that the community has expressed and sort of put them into a framework of how could we do that viably on this lot, find viable ways to meet as many needs as possible, and each one trades off and prioritizes the requests and the desires of the community a little bit differently. But they all are probably within the realm of viability, but we don't know if they're truly viable, like really feasible, like financially feasible, practical, unless we have somebody with a lot more professional expertise like evaluate them. But that is costly. It is costly. We do not have the luxury to have professional fully evaluate for feasibility and future financial projection cost to the borough every single plan that we can come up with. We've put these 5 together, and I think the idea is to narrow them down further to the plans that council believes, not tonight, by the way, but we're going to talk, I'd like to talk about them tonight, but that we would ultimately narrow this list down to perhaps 2, maybe 3 to have fully vetted, and sort of just exert that leadership and discipline on the process so that we can move forward, and that we don't wind up sort of spinning in circles forever. So I don't think time is really our friend on this one, to be honest. So the first one is pretty straightforward: maximize parks and open space. I mean, this is basically making a plan to wind down the leases, remove the building, and turn the entire lot into a park. I think it sort of speaks for itself. There's sort of 2 lists, benefits and challenges, on each of these slides. It would be excessive to go through all of them at this meeting. I don't know if council members have had a chance to look at them. Perhaps in discussion, you could highlight the ones that seem particularly significant as we're thinking about this. But this would require us to fund it through taxes, through grants. I mean, that's sort of the give on this one, is that we would have to pay for it. The second plan was to retain part of the existing buildings, but also expand the parks and open space. So if you look at like the first slide, or one that shows the complex, there's like an older part of the building, which is 3-story, that's over on Essex, and there's some stuff connected to it. But there are some 1- and 2-story parts of the building that are in the central part of the lot that may or may not be feasible to rehabilitate. I think they may be a little bit newer. They may be in better condition. I don't know for sure. But again, this is an idea that also came out of the community. Was, well, look, isn't there some part of that building that could serve as a community building, as a multi-purpose space for the community? Maybe it wouldn't cost as much. Maybe it's in better condition. Can you explore that? So this is an answer to that. To explore that option, to look at whether it's even feasible to retain part of the building for those uses. I mean, that would still expand the green space on this lot, even if you retain sort of a small, probably about 3-fold from what we have now. The third idea was to seek a proposal from community organizations. This is kind of a complex idea, but it really says, look, opens it up to say, look, there's a lot of wonderful nonprofit and community organizations like the Narberth Community Theater, the Food Bank, Wonder Spring, New Horizons, that may want to present a proposal for how they think they could be, a driver, a leader in a plan to perhaps rehabilitate part of the building, or reconfigure this property in a way that sort of meets their needs and the community needs. The next plan was to keep the local childcare and expand the parks and open space. It's also a more complicated plan. I don't think we want to go into an enormous amount of detail. The reason why the local childcare is called out is because that was, as you recall, something that we've heard back consistently from the community, and not just people who have children in the daycare, but even people who don't, who still feel that it's really valuable to have a high-quality early childhood care center, and would really regret seeing that leave the community and feel like that Wonder Spring has been a long-term member of this community. And it's painful to think that we would have to lose Wonder Spring because we can't maintain the building. I'm specifically not talking about the food bank as much in this because the food bank does not have the same highly specialized space needs. I think that there are ways to accommodate that, even if we don't keep the building in Sabine. But when the building in Sabine goes without another provision, Wonder Spring doesn't have a place to be in Arbor, and that is that's a loss. A lot of people expressed that would be a loss. So this plan suggests a way to partner with Wonder Spring, should they be interested, to see if they would be interested in producing a new facility on the other side of the lot, on Montgomery Avenue side, where a commercial use would be more appropriate. This would probably be something where the borough would find some money in this, because I think that the developer who was going to construct a facility over there would, I think the borough would probably wind up being able to take, the goal would be for the borough to be able to wind up profiting from a project like that to the point where we could pay for the demolition and restoration of the rest of the site, parks improvements, and have, again, about three times as much park space, but have it in the neighborhood part of the lot, Essex, Sabine, and all, really all along Sabine. I don't know if we can go back to the first slide. I mean, I think it's really useful to have a visual and to just be concrete about what this idea talks about. This idea sort of says, if you look at the back, right, of the lot, so you see where the tot lot is, if everybody sees that?
I'm gonna do it. I know where you're going.
Oh, you can point, okay.
No,
You can't.
you lost it. You kicked the cable.
No, maybe it just went to sleep.
It went to sleep.
We gotta go back to this place.
This is just.
Should we plug that in at that point?
Just fault.
It must be like Martin looks in here.
It makes me good.
Perfect. That's
Be
way
faster.
faster.
Yeah. Like this. Older guys don't
Okay.
Okay, great.
This is Montgomery Avenue. Here's the park. This is the tot lot. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's probably about an acre. If you were to go from the tot lot to Montgomery Avenue, pretty much straight across, more or less. There's a sort of part of the lot back there that we tend to forget about. It doesn't receive an enormous amount of use. I mean, we do have community gardens there, but now we do. And there's a bit of parkland there, and look, you can look on the slides to see that there's been a lot of thought put into all of these plans for benefits and challenges, but I think it's helpful to have a visual to understand that's the part of the lot that would be being talked about, right? Would be, could a child care facility fit in there? Where the entrance and exit was off of Montgomery Avenue, not off of Sabine Avenue, and the rest of the frontage on Sabine and Essex was park. So just to explain that, because it's not without a thank you for pointing out, I think the visual makes that clear what that's talking about. And then the fifth plan was to, I know this wasn't probably the dominant response, but there were individuals that suggested that we should really be trying to extract some revenue. We should be permitting some kind of controlled residential developments that gets us the best yield from one or both of the frontages, and then when I say frontages, I'm talking about Essex and Montgomery, not Sabine. The Essex or the Montgomery frontages, permit some kind of controlled residential development in one or both of those areas, make some money off of it, and use that money to have a bigger, better park in the middle of the lot. And again, really, pretty much all of these plans came right from the community in one way or another. Some of them are a combination of different ideas that came from the community. And they all involve some degree of trade-offs, money or flexibility or the loss of a daycare use. But they all also have the potential to meet a lot of community needs. So with that said, I don't know if you guys want to talk, if anybody has any thoughts that they want to talk about any of these plans in specific, like, you know what, this one is so bad, I don't ever want to see it again. Or I strongly prefer plan
whatever.
Council members?
Yeah, I mean, I think that,
I'm chomping at the bit, but you guys get to go first.
Could we just make sure that Bob and Cindy can be heard on Zoom?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to make we're not making a decision about this.
We're not making a
But if
decision.
we're going to be shy about talking about this forever, we're never going to make a decision.
No, I think
Right.
now is the moment.
Yes, I agree. I'm not sure if there's a technical.
No, I think they're there.
And this also, I mean,
Cindy?
We can hear you, Rob,
Sound
thank
check.
you. We were not able to hear you on that last vote, but I can hear you now.
I'm not sure if you can hear me.
We hear you,
Yeah, we
Bob.
can hear you. We can hear you.
All right, sound check complete. I'm gonna start with Barbara. You had some thoughts.
I haven't had a chance to fully digest these, but this is really helpful. I really appreciate the way this was put together. The one thought I had in looking through this is, I want a sixth option. I want a sixth. What I found lacking in here was a way that would give us both the outdoor and the indoor community space.
that was Plan 2.
I'm sorry?
Plan 2 was intended to do that, or Plan 1, where ultimately you wind up
Except that
constructing
we
it.
lose Wonder Spring, and I would love to see us be able to, I don't know if it's possible, but that's, I wonder.
Well, I think trying to fit Wonder Spring and a community building and a park on that lot is going to really shortchange the park. But, I mean, it could be another thing. We could say, let's try and do it all.
I think there might be a an engineer or an architect who would give an initial site plan would be able to tell you, can you extract the square footage,
Yeah,
given the sort of land area that you have to work with and the grade that you're dealing with, because it is on a slope. Whether that might be possible. And also, what's the size of the community? If you're looking to have, multi-purpose rooms plus a 300-person theater,
Right, yeah.
you're not going to get a lot of park.
We'd have,
right?
exactly, we'd
But if
have
you-
to define that.
But if you're looking for something smaller, accessorial almost, but available, then you might be able to get
I
something.
mean, I think it's also worth mentioning that any plan that removes the building complex and returns it to park, whether the entire lot or removes it in places, finds a way to construct a new facility for Wonder Spring in that back corner. I mean, once we do the park planning process, a park planning process could certainly include provision for constructing a community building. I mean, I think that's not foreclosed.
Okay, I kind of interpreted these as like, no, you can't have both of those, and I was wondering how we came to that decision that we couldn't have both. And maybe it is just a simple matter of asking an expert.
Yeah.
Could we do this, or is this like pie in the sky?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to,
I don't know.
when it comes to a park planning process, I mean, I think it says the park planning process does not foreclose putting a community building in the park if you're willing to sacrifice that much of the open space, if you have that much to sacrifice.
Well,
It could
again,
be
it
part of the
depends
park.
on, it depends on what you're talking about as communities, indoor community space. I mean, if what you're looking for is something that gives more meeting space for people to have activities, that's not the same as if you say, well, we want to be able to play basketball games inside. So we'd have, we would have to decide what we mean by that. But, it's just, that just was the piece that I found missing, so.
And Barbara, when you look at option 4, which, if you're gonna come and say, listen, we have a tenant, Wonder Spring, childcare, and maybe there's another tenant, whether it's a food bank or another community organization, the borough itself could be a tenant in a building with a financial structure where the borough doesn't own this building, the borough is in charge of building it or renting it, which is a business we're probably trying to get out of.
Totally
But
agree on board
committing
with
to
that.
say, for 10 or 20 years, we're interested in X number of square feet, and then that becomes part of the architectural process of the private developer.
Certainly could, that makes sense too. Yeah.
I don't think there'd be the square footage to do it, but it could be.
Other council members? Yes, Mr.
So, Michelle, thank you for putting this together. We know that we're balancing competing interests. So there's an interest in the daycare. There's an interest in green space. And there's an interest in getting out of this $5 million liability, So it's a balancing act. And I see that balance struck in 2, 3, and 4, and not in 1 and 5. So I would propose narrowing the options to 2, 3, and 4.
Bush, anything?
Yeah, I think that I agree with the consensus that we can't keep with the status quo. So you asked for, well, we all asked for that. We all agreed that it's unsustainable. Option number one is similar to some ideas that came out of the Parks and Recreation Board. So I don't really have I'd like to see that as an option. It's very straightforward. We should be able to cost that out very easily. It may not be the most attractive, but if it's, if the cost of erecting a building is going to be colossal, then that may be the best option. I have concerns about number 5. I think that the community has spoken out strongly, in general, against trying to thinking about this sort of as a way for the borough to not really to make money, but to ease the I think that was one of the least popular options, was trying to reduce tax burdens by making a more financial, taking a more financial approach to the property. So I'm more interested in 1 through 4.
Cindy?
Sure, not to repeat what everyone said, but I really want to highlight something that Samantha said at our last meeting when she presented our budget as really a tool for equity, and really had me think about the burden of debt that we're putting on future generations who are never going to reap the benefits of that investment. And I really would go as far to say that it's unethical for us to work as stewards of community tax dollars to invest $5 million in deferred maintenance for a building that we are increasingly seeing difficult to lease, for all the reasons Michelle pointed out. And particularly this aerial view is just really shocking. And I haven't really seen this before, or perhaps I haven't viewed it in this way. I am most interested in what I think you have identified, Michelle, is option 3, where you're looking really for proposals from community organizations. And I guess my one question is, we keep saying Wonder Spring. We can't make Wonder Spring stay here. So I am curious to drill down a little bit on the details on what type of memorandum of understanding, or how do we really develop a relationship like they have, I believe, in the city, as well as that kind of public-private use in building space. I'd like to understand that more, with really a critical lens and attention to looking for space for the Narberth Community Theater, housing, again, programming. I think we should probably speak more as stakeholders than specific organizations, since we don't have control over those. So I should say, I think I have a big interest in supporting food insecurity, programming for senior citizens, childcare, and the arts and culture. So I believe that that's most encompassed in the kind of 4th option.
Third. You meant third.
Third option, sorry.
Although,
third option.
See ways where 3 and 4 could be, similar.
Yeah, they are really similar. But I do think, without us saying, we can. We should probably talk more broadly in stakeholders and not specific organizations, given that, I don't think we want to contract them into that space.
You mean is to discuss this community desire for childcare rather than the specific provider?
I can, because I'm thinking the food bank. Suppose the food bank says we have great space on Forest Avenue. We can't. Do we want to tie particular organizations to this space? Rather, I think that we should think more broadly into, again, like buckets of stakeholders and programming. That includes absolutely open and green space. I think we say at every meeting, we resolved to do that years ago. This picture tells that story and reiterates that commitment. This council has showed an interest in food insecurity, seniors, community arts, and childcare.
Councilor Weisborn?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I have the good fortune of drafting on a very complete and thoughtful conversation, beginning with an excellent presentation, Michelle, because it really, even been looking at this issue for as long as you have for a while, and I just feel as though the way you presented it kind of opened our eyes really in a new way to to the same issue. And I also agree that that photograph that you have, the aerial view, and the way you described the kind of the possible development of a small portion of it, while almost quadrupling the size of the existing park, is very intriguing. I agree with most council members that we jettison the fifth option. I don't hear that as something that members of our community want, and I think it's unnecessary given the fact that we have four other seemingly viable options. I like the idea of keeping option 1 on the table because it doesn't foreclose on option 3. It doesn't foreclose on option 3 or 4. It's, we could pursue option 1 and leave option 3 and 4 for future generations, perhaps. So I think option 1 is good to keep on the table. I think as Cindy and Aaron were talking back and forth about options 3 and 4, I realized that I actually sort of see those as a singular option together, that Wonder Spring is one of the local community organizations and could be, I don't necessarily see option 3 and 4 being mutually exclusive. In other words, I'd like to see us add to option 3 the notion that we're going to expand parks and open space. I think it's probably implied that regardless of which community organizations might make a proposal, we would also seek to expand the parks and open space just as it's outlined in option 4. So I kind of see marrying those two together. The only thing I haven't addressed is option 2. Option 2 is very intriguing because it suggests that we could expand the parks and open space extensively, and maybe there's a little portion of existing building that could be adaptively reused or re-inhabited. Maybe there's for example, the freestanding building on Windsor Avenue where I'm not sure what's in there currently, but it's the building closest to Sabine Avenue. Is a kind of several thousand square feet. It could make a really great public accommodation because it's already fitted with bathrooms, for example. So you would already have bathrooms on a new park. And maybe it's large enough to accommodate some of the uses of some of the existing service organizations and as well as create some indoor public space. Anyway, this is a great conversation. I appreciate, Michelle, the way in which you've really teed this up. So.
I'm going to explain something because I think that this is a misunderstanding. I think option 1 absolutely does foreclose option 4. And realistically, option 1, which says terminate the leases, demolish the building, restore the site, plant a park, is not going to bring a child care of any form back in. Wonder Spring is not going to leave the facility and then come back to Narberth. Forget if Wonder Spring leaves the building. Option 4 is very specifically structured to say, look, we know Wonder Spring has just engaged in a process where they work cooperatively with us, a large number of public and private interests to spec out their facilities needs in a new facility down in West Philly. They're familiar with this process. They know what they need. They know what the specifications are. There may be, this is the borough is not going to do this. The borough is going to look and see if there's a developer. If Wonder Spring were interested in being a tenant in a new facility, given that they've just done this, I didn't even know that, right? Then you need to see if there's a developer that's interested in constructing a building that has a long-term child care tenant, building it to their specifications, knowing that they have that long-term tenant. Then they would need to build that first, right? Then Wonder Spring would move in, then demolish the buildings, right? You can't, the choice to demolish the building is a choice to, it will have that, I think it will clearly have the consequence. Like plan 1, 2, we will not be able to keep Wonder Spring. And I am going to say Wonder Spring, not some early child care center, because I don't really think that there's I've never heard I don't know that there's an appetite to say, well, let's choose to build a facility for a child care and then seek a new child care tenant. I haven't heard that from the community. I don't think that's I think the interest here is to say, look, we've got Wonder Spring has been a long-term community member and is a really good childcare and provides a really good childcare experience. And a lot of people think highly of the organization. And we know that they've just done something similar, but in this case, it would not be probably a public-private partnership with a lot of economic development grants and other kinds of funding, complex funding. This would pretty much have to be a private development. And then I think that is what distinguishes option 4 from option 3. Option 3 isn't proposing to find a private developer to do this. It's really putting the onus on community organizations to see if they can form a consortium that would. I think it's a big ask. I think it's complex, but it's definitely different from option 4. In that sense, it's distinguishable in terms of the ownership structure that it's suggesting and the financial piece.
Go ahead, and then I'll.
Michelle, help me understand, because I really, your knowledge of this is amazing. And I'm like, wow. I'm slowly trying to catch up to you. So you said that number 4 would have to be a private developer, that we couldn't do a public-private or get grant money, and I'm just wondering what about this means that we couldn't do that? I'm just curious, because it sounds like when Wonder Spring did the West Philadelphia thing, maybe they did.
They're in an economic development zone.
Okay.
They're not. There are a number of credits you can get. I think there's also an affordable housing component to that I'm not sure that our community is expressed. Our community has expressed an interest in senior housing, but that doesn't necessarily come with the same level of development credits. So they were able to leverage a lot of development credits like that were available to us.
I'd like to add something, I'd like to exchange some thoughts with Michelle if possible.
Go ahead.
Thank you. That helps me.
Michelle?
Yes.
What I'm hearing, the way I'm looking at this, is that option 4, in some ways, is a more detailed iteration of a proposal from a community organization. So I'm kind of seeing that one of the other organizations, say under option 3, might also develop a similar kind of partnership as Wonder Spring might. So I guess I just see option 4 as an iteration under option 3. It's more detailed. So I don't see any reason why another community organization might also come up with a similar proposal.
Option 4 contemplates the borough making a decision to see if Wonder Spring is interested in this, and then seeking a developer and probably long-term leasing or selling a portion of the lot.
Okay. That's very helpful. That's very helpful.
Project, whereas option 3 doesn't have sort of any financing components built in. So.
Okay, that's helpful. But let's just chat about that for a second. I guess I'm just going to play devil's advocate. Why would we do that? Why would we say, what would the benefit be for pursuing that separate, say, from just pursuing number 3 and including Wonder Spring in, say, that opened invitation? In other words, Wonder Spring could walk through door number 3 without the borough without the, say, council and the borough choosing door number 4. Isn't that correct?
So if I could weigh in, Bob, because I think this is kind of where I'm headed with my comments.
Okay.
I'll start with number 1. I think number 1 should stay on the table. It's simple, it's accomplishable, and you can easily project its financial impacts moving forward. And it matches community desire, not in all, but in this really significant result to what people have expressed. I think that option 3 is the most complex. It has the most number of balls in the air, the most number of what ifs, but it's a dreamy vision. And if it worked out, it could really be fantastic for so many pieces of our community. I think, though, that option 4 is a scenario that is more straightforward. Selling a piece of the property, moving the activity, and I'll get into later, sort of why I would like what. But if you maybe want to give option 3 a chance, and then if there's a decision, which is we don't want to do 1, then you can move to option 4, which is a more straightforward way of making sure something happens, versus just sort of waiting for pie in the sky, or some magical grant money or something like that. Does that make sense? So.
Well, the nice thing about option 3 also is, it could be something that we would decide, look, we want to make that invitation. We want to be more specific about what we're looking for from community organizations, what kind of structure, how much specificity. And then, at the same time, we can still be, considering other possibilities.
Yes.
They're not mutually exclusive, because that is really something we're asking those community organizations to sort of take the responsibility. It's a lot to ask, but it's also an enormous opportunity, right, to guide and direct.
Right. So what I would like to see is an expansion of the sort of the slide for option 3 to say, this is what we want to do. If it stalls, you would move to an option 4, right? And that becomes one piece. And then your other option, the only remaining option, is to go to park. I had emailed you, Michelle, separately about dealing with the budgetary impact that right now, from a cash perspective, every year this cash is coming in. This financial analysis shows you're taking it in the general fund, and it's going right back out the capital fund, and it's actually going out more. Yep. So that money isn't really there, but those budgetary changes need to start to happen for the borough, so that we move beyond the discussion of it's a revenue source, because it's not. Right? It's an illusion of accounting that it's a revenue source, and basically from this point forward, and probably for the past couple of years, that we tipped over past the useful life of this building when we began that roof repair. So whether it ends up in an option 3 sort of community project or an option 4 developer build, the idea to me of moving all of the activity on the site to Montgomery Avenue, moving the traffic flow in and out of that site to Montgomery Avenue, getting rid of the traffic on Sabine Avenue, taking advantage of the fact that the property is above grade on Montgomery Avenue significantly, so that you could have possibility for vehicles entering and leaving underground parking. The borough can consider through its zoning what its height requirement might be on that property to add square footage while maintaining open space, and doing it in a way where all of the frontage is sort of facing away from the borough and facing a very busy road. Seems like a tremendous opportunity. You may even end up with more usable square footage, not square footage, from a real estate perspective, but usable square footage for community use, and a significantly larger open green space. It's a net win. And then it really comes down to sort of who owns the land, where, and what organizations are interested in participating, and can they pay the rates, the borough included, that it would cost to make it happen. But it seems like there's tremendous opportunity there. And bring the park inwards. Right now, the park is up against a busy street, and there's just a fence keeping those kids away from Montgomery Avenue, as opposed to actual distance. Keep the noise away from the park so that people can have more passive recreation opportunities. And I will just weigh in, having been a tenant of that building for, I suppose it's 6 or 8 years. The building that is facing Essex gets all of its utilities and heat and everything from the other buildings. So it's all one big connect. I would be truly surprised, although I'm not an architect or an engineer, if you were able to demolish the other buildings in the middle, sort of keep one and renovate it to a point where it would work for you. And I would be surprised.
That's why you wouldn't do 2.
That's why I wouldn't do 2. I just don't personally think it will work in a cost-effective way. But
I'm listening to the comments about the development along Montgomery Avenue, kind of with an ear as if I'm a tenant, as if I'm a resident who lives on Sabine Avenue. And I think it's really important to emphasize that actually all of the park area along Sabine Avenue could be retained under that scenario. It's not the park, the Sabine Avenue portion of the park much of it could be retained.
You would see a lot more green on Sabine Avenue as a result if you move the building to the northeast quadrant of the parcel.
Right, it's important that people who live on Sabine Avenue understand that what you're saying is not that there would be development on that corner of Montgomery and Sabine Avenue.
Right.
No, it definitely says that a condition of the project would be a substantial buffer between the building and Sabine Avenue. I mean, I think that would be a condition of permitting someone to do this. Just,
yeah.
We don't want to take one building out of a residential area and then stick it in a different part of the residential area. That's not our goal.
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly.
That's good to
Michelle, can I ask one more question?
Go ahead.
So I just want to clarify. Me, 3 is ideal with the caveat because it is a heavy lift. If 3 is not possible, you move to 4. Is there an option, an alternative for the borough to kind of help support the food bank, the Narberth Community Theater, Wonder Spring, to begin that conversation, whether it's, like an ad hoc group of folks who do that, who live in our own community, or is there perhaps maybe some sort of grant funding for economic development or planning that we can help support? Because that is a really heavy lift for the community groups to begin to think about.
If we are able, as a group, to come to a conclusion that we sort of have a limited number of plans and we would like to move forward with them, that sounds like the next step is to explore what that looks like, to move that to the next step.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Are there other questions from council members, other comments? It's exciting.
Is there anybody that doesn't want to just say 5 is not on the table, so we just take it off? Is there anybody that wants to keep 5 in the consideration? Okay, so that's gone.
5 line 5.
5 by 5, so we're down to 4. We said we weren't going to make any decisions, but that's an easy one.
Yeah, I wonder if we could determine, Aaron, just confirm your hunch about 2.
Yeah.
Do you think, or I don't know.
I don't know how many dollars you'd have to spend with an architect and engineer to find out. But as you move a little further down the path, it's probably 4 figures. It's probably not 5 figures.
And can we just ask the property manager their opinion? I mean, they'd be able to give at least a general.
Sure.
That'd be free.
KCBA know?
What's that?
Would KCBA know?
I don't.
They did their analysis, would they know how the heating was?
The mechanical, I know, the mechanical room is in the, I know, I mean, you can see on the plans where it is.
The mechanicals are in the other room.
The mechanicals need replacement.
So you would lose your basement. So you have currently 3 stories. So the building starts to shrink because you're right. So you think you're retaining it, but it's getting even smaller than.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of feasibility issues.
That'd be my concern.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking because we invested in the roof in that one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But.
I mean, I have some sympathy with the idea that if it was feasible to retain that building for a reasonable amount of money, that could give, community organizations a head start on their planning, but it does, unfortunately, that would probably take Wonder Spring out of the equation around child care.
Yeah. Oh, Mark, I didn't. I
all
think
the trade-offs.
You might have mentioned this, but the idea of building another building on Montgomery Avenue, it allows continuous operation of one site, construction of another site, move the operation, demolish and restore, which is uninterrupted, which is necessary to run a child care.
I also think it is probably worth mentioning that if you were to do that plan 4 and have a commercial developer and you were actually selling a portion of the property and permitting them to do that, you would probably make money for the borough that would then be used to pay for the demolition, the site restoration, park planning, and I don't know.
Yeah.
So
likely
it could
to be
become a revenue neutral project rather than having to borrow and see other grants.
Whereas that's not true of option 1.
No. And option 2 is probably the most expensive of all. I mean, it's.
So I think it's a good opportunity. The community has heard this conversation. We're going to get some feedback from community members. Mayor?
Just for a moment, I don't want to rehash. Everybody said great ideas, and my only 2 cents is I love Aaron's, thoughts on the process. I would love, if it's possible, to have like ElderNet in the same building as the childcare, because I think there's just such great benefits of having the 2 feed off each other and work together. I think if possible, I think that would be an outstanding benefit to the borough. Not, Eldred.
New Horizons?
Verizon.
New
Horizons.
Yeah, senior services.
Senior services. Senior services and childcare services could greatly benefit from being together.
Okay. All right, so I think the community's had an opportunity to hear a conversation. We're going to look forward to your feedback, community feedback, either in writing or at public comment at our next meeting. And we will continue to have this conversation. And I think we're moving to a phase, though, where decisions are going to be made to do more specific exploration of what might be possible now that there's a more clear vision of what some of our options are. Okay.
And Aaron, can I suggest that perhaps we put out an additional flash with a link of these slides just to alert folks, not just on the north side or not just really proximate to Sabine, but the entire community, given that it's the entire community's tax dollars, but really alert them that there's a kind of a hot topic coming up in 2 weeks.
Well, yeah, let's take slide 5 off though, so we can.
Well, what I'm going to actually suggest, Cindy, I think that's a good point, would be a link to the video, the recording of this meeting with the timestamp of when this conversation starts, because I don't think these slides were designed to be read outside of the sort of audio narrative of the conversation we've been having here, and I'm concerned people will get the wrong impression reading them.
Perfect. Whatever that is, I think if we can put it out on social media, if we can send it perhaps in a lone flash, just to alert folks, that's important.
Okay. I have no problem with that. All right, let's go to 7C, comprehensive plan.
Actually, if we can at this point, I'd like to try and go back to, oh, never mind, Michelle Carroll's got it.
Okay, yeah.
Samantha, actually, if you want to, again, make me co-host, I'll put it up so we can see the full document.
Do you want, because I made some edits
off?
and sent it on, Cindy, so I think Michelle Carroll may have the, let me see.
We're going to have Michelle steer whatever is going to be on the screen.
Do you want me to manage this, Cindy, or do you want, I mean, because I sent Michelle kind of a cleaned up version of this to try to consolidate it.
Yes, please do.
Okay.
It's hard, the audio is not fantastic here. So yes, Michelle has the cleaned up version.
Yeah, so Michelle, I emailed you a...
Michelle, stop sharing. Michelle, we can all see your email.
Sorry.
Oops.
All right, so this is the result of a discussion that we had based on the comprehensive plan survey that everybody on council looked at. So we took the bullet points in the comprehensive plan and we looked at how much we've accomplished as a borough on the action items in the comprehensive plan. So what I did was I took the comprehensive plan items that were marked as high priority and looked at the ones that council had rated as the ones we've made the least progress on. So these are the items that are most important according to the comprehensive plan that we've done the least, made the least progress on. And these are topics, hopefully. So we went through and we tried to figure out, well, which committee or who's right to be working on this. We talked about sort of some challenges, sort of how these might be approached over the next year or two by council to sort of tick some things off of our to-do list. So you can see on the screen up here, we've got the comprehensive plan number, the description of the topic, priority, the score that council gave it. So low score means low progress. And then just some notes, and then which committee might be appropriate to deal with it, who might be some community partners or other groups that we'd be reaching out to. So this is something that hopefully council leadership can work with the borough manager on to determine agendas for next year and going forward. See what kind of capacity we have to deal with these issues going forward that have been identified as high priority. We have a tendency to look at sort of what's emerging and what's coming up, but a lot of these are long-term issues that have been identified that it would be good to give them their due. So I don't know if you want me to go through some of the items, or if, I can send this document to everybody so you can see what we kind of have in mind.
Yeah, please send it around.
Okay, I will send it around. It didn't come through very well when we in the packet, so it was hard to read. But this is basically what we were trying to convey. And then hopefully, right now these are just the high priority items, but hopefully next year we can look at some medium priority items and look at the ones on those that are in need of attention.
Okay.
Anyone have questions or comments on the process here?
I have could we put this on the website, alongside the meeting materials for tonight's meeting? Could this be added as an additional item in this format? Because this is much easier to look at than what was in the packet. I think will make more sense to folks who haven't. So I'm just thinking, how do we get this out to the public so they can see it? That's my question. Is that a possibility?
Well, I guess my concern is if we start pulling individual items out of the packet and putting it on the website, like how do we decide when we're going to do that and not going to do that? I do think that this document would be in the packet for whenever we're talking about it.
Okay.
I'm certainly maybe on the comp plan page or on the relevant part of the website where we talk about the comp plan and all that. I think that's certainly go on the plan and presentation page and all that.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't want to put it on. I'm open to put it on the website. I just don't want it on the page where we keep the council meeting materials.
I think you mentioned putting it where the comprehensive plan
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. Because if I'm interested in the comprehensive plan, my next question is what are the priorities and what are we doing with that?
Yeah, and that makes sense. I hadn't thought about that. I was just thinking about, somebody had looked at the meeting packet for tonight and said, I don't understand what this thing is.
Yeah. So,
and this has got column headings with names, so they can understand what it is. And so I was like, oh, this would be great if the public had access to that now.
and I don't think we're committing to do all of these things right now either. This is going to depend on capacity for the committees and for the borough staff. It'll be part of the conversation on what we're going to be, our agendas for next year.
Yeah.
Cindy?
I also think if we, Samantha, I like your idea of, on the webpage putting some sort of concept about, evaluation of the comprehensive plan, because I think it's a nice reminder both to council and the public that this is in fact a living document that we have to look at. Fred and Bob and I did recommend in FNA that this becomes an annual project. We started earlier to actually inform the budget. So perhaps some narrative to really our commitment to continually to refer back to this community created document and showing the iterations of that evaluation is just an important kind of public narrative for everyone.
I just want to thank everyone for putting in the time to work on this survey, and Bob and Cindy for working with me to get through all of these recommendations and try to structure. I think next year we'll be better able to, we've done this once before, we'll be better able to go through this process again smoothly. So.
Okay. I guess I'd just like to add that I think council's deliberative work to read the comprehensive plan, understand the priorities which were created through a broad community process, and then use that to set our priorities is the most democratic and inclusive way that we can use the power of this government to achieve community goals. And I think it speaks very highly of this council, and as well as all of our boards and commissions and commitment to engagement with all citizens and hearing all of their ideas and trying to figure out what is the public good. Not what I think it is, or what the manager thinks it is, or what I'll call you out, Barbara thinks it is on any given day, but that it is carefully thought out and it's deliberative. And it makes me proud to be part of this borough. So thank you for the work. All right, well, let's move on the announcements.
No, I don't.
Were there any information items?
Not that I'm aware of unless council has any.
Okay, and we will be returning from executive session to make any decisions.
We will not.
Okay, then I will take.
Wait, Aaron, before you make that motion, and I don't have this information in front of me, but maybe Bob has it or Rob has it handy. We got some pretty fabulous data and news from the Shade Tree Commission Rob or Bob, can you shout that out for information? It was our biggest trees, biggest volunteers.
Yeah, we had 49 trees planted and I think over 60 volunteers. So the Shade Tree Commission has done their best ever effort. It's a lot of work to dig all those holes and recruit all the volunteers.
One in particular.
Show us your guns, Jim.
So, and I know the staff also helped in Public Works. So
Great.
thanks to everyone.
Okay. All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Moved. Second. Seconded. All in favor? Aye. Meeting is adjourned. We will take a 5-minute break and then go into executive session to discuss personnel matters. Thank you.
Michelle Carroll, before you leave